So today we have more information about the upcoming March event and a leak that could possibly be suggesting the iMacs that we've been waiting for an eternity now might be ready within the next few weeks or so. Yes, we could be seeing the magical iMac redesign with Apple Silicon as soon as March. That's just insane. So without further ado, let's delve into this. Make sure to like and subscribe, click that bell notification for the latest Apple news and rumors. And with that being said, let's just tuck in. Right, so before I delve into the leak, I do have to mention a few asterisks, and that is regarding the source. So the source in question is Love to Dream. He's actually incredibly reliable. He has an accuracy rating of 89% on Apple Track, so he's clearly one of the top dogs in this industry. But you see, there is a catch because Love to Dream likes giving us cryptic tweets, which means that he presents a riddle or puzzle of sorts, which of course could suggest a leak of something, and we have to work it out. And so, because of that, there are various ways of interpreting this recent leak. But essentially, what I think this could be suggesting is the new iMacs, and so let's explain exactly why I think that. So the tweet in question has 12-4, and then he asks for the answer, and of course, you don't need that many brain cells to work out the answer is 3, but obviously this is suggesting some sort of leak, and so this is where the iMac comes in. So Love to Dream tweeted this a few weeks ago where he basically just put the number 3 and then linked a video to the history of the iMac. And this video in question delves into the past of the iMac and how it's pretty much been the same since 2012. But at the end of this video, there is a mention of the iMac redesign, and so this is what Love to Dream could be possibly referring to. Anyways, coming back to this riddle, of course we know that 3 is the answer, and of course he's used 3 in the context of the iMac in a previous tweet, so we can assume this is the new iMac he's talking about. Now of course, some of you might be wondering where exactly is the release date in this tweet. Well, of course, the number 3 could signify a few things to us. Well, number 1, which I think is less likely, this 3 could represent Q3 of this year, so the third quarter, which would mean that we would see the iMac late into the year. But what I kind of want it to be and what I'm leaning towards it being is of course the third month of the year, March. We're seeing a March event, we've known this for some time, and so the iMac could be launching as soon as March. And to those thinking, wow, Saran, you're so clever, how did you come up with this theory? I didn't, I really just stole it off Twitter. So to the Twitter guy who came up with this theory, I'm sorry, I'm taking credit for this, but yeah, that's how life is, let's just move on. Now actually there is a piece of evidence that could suggest this is true, because out of the numerous theories in the replies below this tweet, Love to Dream only replied to the tweet regarding the iMac theory. Now, of course, he did say Lamau, and Lamau could either mean Lamau he worked it out, or Lamau he's just blatantly wrong, so yeah, I'm inclined to believe it's the former. We'll have to wait and see for Love to Dream to give us more information, but for the time being I think this is referring to the iMacs. But anyways, let's discuss what other pieces of evidence are there to suggest this could be true. And we begin with Min-Chi Kuo, another very reliable leaker. He told us last year that at the end of 2020, we could have seen a 24-inch iMac. Now yes, I know he was wrong because we didn't get an iMac at the end of 2020, but we now know why iMacs and mini LED devices were delayed in general, and that is because of the pandemic and how supply chains were affected. It's why the iPad Pro with mini LED we're getting very, very soon was actually supposed to release at the end of 2022, but now because of the delays, it's been pushed back to March of 2021. So again, we know the new iMacs with the new design will have mini LED, so of course, it being delayed to spring 2021 makes a lot of sense. In addition to this, we also had the China Times claim back in October that we could see a new iMac launch in spring 2021. And of course, spring 2021 is, well, pretty much when the March event takes place. So yeah, the stars are starting to align. Though of course I do have to mention that the China Times does have an accuracy of 77%, which is pretty decent, but they've only leaked 9 things in the past, so they don't have an established record like the other sources I've mentioned. Now there is another possibility-ish that maybe we could see the entry-level iMac at this event, and then of course the more powerful machines later in the year. This would explain why Min Chi Kuo specifically said the 24-inch iMac would launch at the end of 2020. He doesn't refer to both sizes, and so there is a possibility, much like the M1 machines, Apple will cover the entry-level machines first and then make their way to the more powerful machines later in the year. And also, it is very likely this entry-level iMac sticks to either the M1 chip or something similar to the M1 like the M1X. And so I guess because it's a pretty minor refresh in terms of performance, Apple can sort of justify releasing it this early into the year. In fact, the China Times in their report mentioned we could be seeing an A14T in the new iMac. And yes, that sounds very weird, but let me explain. So essentially the A14 and the M1 are very similar in terms of cores and architecture, and of course one is optimized for iPhones and iPads and the other is optimized for Macs. And of course this report was released back in October, and this was a month before the M1 launch, so we knew nothing about the name of the chip or the new Macs, and so I think they were just calling it the A14 simply because we had no clue as to what these chips would be called. But anyways, coming back to my point, they mention this iMac launching in spring would have an A14T chip. So this chip that's based on the M1, but would have a big boost in terms of graphics. In fact, they mention the processor's codename would be Lufica. I have no idea what that means, but yes, Lufica is a pretty cool name, and apparently it would be a massive improvement over the M1 in terms of GPU performance. And that makes sense because of course the iMacs being a desktop, they can have beefier internals, and so the entry-level model having essentially the M1 in terms of CPU and then having a slightly faster GPU makes a lot of sense to me. But anyways, because this chip isn't that different from the M1, I think it makes sense that Apple can release this at the March event because of course it's a pretty minor boost in terms of performance compared to the other machines we should be getting later in the year. Now the only issue I have with this is if Apple does release the 24-inch iMac by itself, it's going to look so much better than the more expensive, archaic, chonk bezel iMac and iMac Pro we have today. And surely Apple won't sell a cheaper iMac with a more modern design alongside, of course, the more expensive machines with the much older design. Now, yes, I know the MacBook lineup is pretty fragmented because, of course, we have Apple Silicon on the lower-end machines, which is better than the Intel chips in the higher-end machines. But ultimately, this does seem slightly unlikely in my opinion, because of course, this would confuse so many consumers. Imagine having to pick between having the best specs possible or having a much nicer design. It would just leave people polarized, and so I don't think Apple would do that. That'll backfire on them. And so if they're releasing the iMac, it has to be done together, and the refresh must be done all at once. Now, of course, a lot of you might be wondering, haven't we also got information about the MacBook Pros coming out in March? And yes, that's true. In fact, I've discussed this at length in various videos, which of course you can check out in the icon above. And to that I say, I'm just covering as many reports as I can. Obviously, when we get more credible information from reliable sources, I'll inform you guys, and hopefully we do get a clearer picture as to what exactly we can expect from this March event. And also, let me remind you, this is an interpretation of this tweet because Love Dream refuses to give us any crystal clear information, and so yeah, I could be completely wrong about this prediction. If you want my 2 cents, I think as much as I want to see the new iMacs, I think the MacBook Pros coming out in March makes a lot more sense, and then of course the iMacs follow suit in WWDC. But tell me in the comments below, how do you think the rollout of these next Apple Silicon machines will look like? Do you think we'll see machines in March, or do you think they'll begin to come out in May? Tell me everything about it in the comments below. And on that note, thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click that bell notification for the latest Apple news and rumors. Check out a video here in the icon above about the iPhone 13 and everything we know so far. And on that note, I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya, peeps.